All right, Kevin back with you for another episode of the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And today, I'm here today with Steve Kahle. Steve, welcome. So awesome to have you on the show today.
Thanks for the invite. Glad to be here.
You bet. You're so welcome. And heck, I'm glad to be here too. And I am really looking forward to this conversation today. I want to start off by giving a shout out because Fabi Paolini is the one who introduced you and I. And, what a great way to get connected with somebody new in our lives than through somebody that we've already got a great relationship with. That is like the absolute best right there. And so Fabi had sent an email to introduce you and I, and then we already had a conversation. You and I hopped on Zoom, and Steve, I don't know what that conversation was like for you, but for me, it was just kind of like I felt like I'd known you for years already, just
Yeah,
because of how we got connected.
that's right.
And what a testament right there to the power of right relationships, which of course is what this podcast is all about and stuff.
I
And
totally
so
agree.
we're going to have an awesome conversation today, and I'm going to dig right in. I'm just going to ask a nice, simple, easy question to get us rolling, and then we can dive deeper from there. But Steve, what do you do and who do you serve?
Yeah, so I am a fractional CIO slash CTO for three high performing organizations. Sort of fell into it. I was finishing up a career chapter. I co-founded a web development company for a number of years and looking for what's next and an opportunity. And I really like this prayer from our senior pastor here in Austin. Like, Lord, would you just drop things in my lap? I'm not smart enough, wise enough. You know what I need. Just drop things in my lap. And I thought, what a great prayer. I've been praying that prayer for years. And he just started dropping things in my lap. And the first opportunity was a fractional CTO opportunity. And did not want to go full time. They couldn't really afford me full time anyway. And so this is before fractional really became more mainstream.
Okay.
And then right behind that, two more projects. And there's been kind of a rebalancing over the years. But also about 2.5 years ago, Kevin, an opportunity, actually two back to back, another kind of like two opportunities that fell in out. I mean, I needed two new projects and they fell in back to back. And I'm like, God, is that from you? And it was the opportunity to be a fractional CIO. And I've been in technology all my life and I definitely understand the CIO role, but I didn't really have the intimate knowledge and understanding. And so I really felt like, okay, this was a stretch assignment and decided, I prayed about it and felt like, okay, I mean, just the way it happened, I'm like, it was just, you could just kind of tell, okay, this appears to be a gift and leaned into it. And it's been an absolute blast. And I had to really change up, and I call it a learning operating system. I had to really tune my learning operating system now towards cybersecurity, AI governance, IT governance. Immediately, first thing was, okay, I need to find the top, podcast on cybersecurity, for example. And so my allocation of my learning time started to shift so I could be able to hit the ground running and continue to absorb all of the changes. It's happening, as we all know, incredibly rapidly. I mean, just today, I'm listening to one of my favorite cybersecurity podcasts, and a new concept, a new term called exploit gem hit my radar. And I'm like, I had to pause. I'm like, I don't know what an exploit gem is. And so, that was an opportunity to stop, capture that, catalog it, and then very importantly, it's now into my recall system so I'll be able to bake it into long-term memory so I can truly lead from first principles. So that's, a lot of words. That's basically kind of what I do. So right now I'm a fractional technology leader.
Very cool. So, what inspires you most, Steve, about the work you get to do and the impact that you get to make?
I really like Colossians 3:23, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord. And so our standard is excellence. And I love bringing excellence. I call it human-centered, technology-enabled operational excellence.
Okay.
I really love the intersection of, because, business is challenging, can be messy. You got humans involved. But it creates a real multifaceted environment to be able to find elegant solutions. And so I really love the intersection of technology and operations. And ultimately, it's about really helping humans flourish, looking at an environment. And when you're a fractional CIO and also CTO, you're ultimately responsible in large aspects for the productivity stack of an organization, making sure that the technology is safe, secure, but ultimately people are efficient and can lean into their God-given talents and deliver their excellence for the environment.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what is some of your backstory, Steve? I mean, when I was a kid, I always wanted to be a fireman, and I never became a fireman. But yet, I would have never imagined that I'd be doing what I get to do today. And yet, man, I wouldn't trade that for nothing. And I know you're the same way. What is the backstory? How did we get here? How did you get into even doing the kind of work that you get to do today?
Yeah, I like Kevin too, how you said get to. That's such a
That's
great,
right.
great mindset. It really is a big get to. Work is truly a blessing. We were wired, and built and designed to create and add value. So for me, it was when I was 12 years old, probably like many people listening to this podcast. My dad said, "Hey, it's time for you to mow the lawn." This is in Arlington, Texas, so Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas. And he's like, "Time for you to mow the lawn and I'll pay you 20 bucks a week." I'm like, "Fantastic." And I said, "Hey, Dad, can I use this equipment to mow other people's lawns?" And he said, "Sure." And so that was the start of precision lawn care.
Okay.
And over time, ended up replacing all the equipment with commercial grade gear. I hired two of my best friends, and we were mowing. Like on Fridays, we had like 17 lawns to mow.
Wow.
We were precision lawn care. We were sharpening our mower blades every single morning, so that our lawns, rather than that blade sort of tearing the grass, it cuts the grass. You can really see the difference. I was the string trimmer guy, and man, my edges were like robotic precision. It was a blast to be able to orchestrate, and as a team, I mean, we're trying to make money, but also minimize our time in the Texas heat. And so it was just fun. I saw firsthand entrepreneurship, collaboration, and being able to create. Because I did, my parents were shocked when I sat them down, and I was all seriousness after one of my seasons. And I actually claimed independence from my parents. I'm like, "Hey, I have all this cash. I can pay for myself." But of course, they paid for the house and the food. But I was able to really create an independent approach to life and really enjoyed the freedom that entrepreneurship gave. And I really liked too kind of this puzzle piece of being able to solve challenges and how we would have always at least sometimes two backup lawnmowers so that if we're out across town and we have an issue that we can continue to deliver excellence in that neighborhood. So I really fell in love with self-employment and then came to a crossroads of, okay, it's time to get my degree, get back into self-employment. So I ended up going to school in Tampa, University of South Florida, Kevin, and really enjoyed that experience. Decided to come back to the Dallas-Fort Worth area when I graduated, but the green of Florida got in my blood, and it was brown and flat, and I decided to check out Austin, Texas, and it really is the jewel of Texas. Fell in love with it, the topography, the rolling hills, the energy, the vibe. I felt, this is where I need to be. And I was looking for the next opportunity. And then here's the internet, becomes commercialized. And I realized that companies would need companies to create websites. And so that's when I, co-founded a web development company.
Gotcha. So what year was that, Steve, that you founded the web development company?
Yeah. So that was back in 95. And Kevin, for a fun story, for, those who are maybe have some gray hairs, from 95 to 97, for 2 years, I had to carry around one of those large 15-inch CRT monitors with 50 feet of dial-up cable. I had to first sell the internet before I could sell the web development services. And I remember in 97, it was a magical year. All of a sudden, everyone realized what the internet was, so I could retire that big bag. But it was 95 right at the beginning. And so I rode the entire wave and saw all the changes and how websites started off being, very simple HTML based to, these really powerful web applications, and just loved the challenge in that. You're designing and building and creating, value that ultimately is impacting businesses and making people's lives better.
Yeah. Wow. Hearing you share brings back memories because like 1997 was when I bought my very first computer and stuff. And to use for my business, I owned a carpet cleaning and water damage restoration business at that time,
Yeah.
and it was growing, but everything was on paper, and I had a ledger, and I'm like, and I had found out about QuickBooks, and I'm like, well, you need a computer to use that, and then I heard about this CRM that I could use in the business, and I'm like, it's time to get a computer. And then by 2000, I had my first website, probably one of the ugliest websites on the internet, called Get Mold Solutions. It was like an extension of my cleaning and restoration business,
Oh yeah.
and that was the year. I don't know if it was, yeah, it was 2000. That was the first year that I sold a product online. I sold a mold test kit from somebody. I couldn't even tell you where they were, but they were not local to me, and they had saw words that I had put on the internet and ended up buying a product, and I was just fascinated by that.
Oh
They
yeah.
like this person saw words that I put on a web page, and that they decided to invest in a mold test kit with me because of that. And I'm like, wow, that
It's
was I,
magic.
I mean, that was mind blowing to me.
Oh, big time. Incredible.
Yeah, yeah, and of course that seems like today. That seems like the dark ages, doesn't it?
So true. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So let's fast forward. I mean, what then happened after you started doing this, and now you didn't have to lug that thing around all over the place.
Yeah, no, it was glorious. Like in '97, also we landed Dell as an account, and that really accelerated the business
I'll
and
bet.
building up the team. And then of course we had kind of two recessions along there, so I definitely earned some scar tissue.
Yep,
Things like waiting too long to lay people off. And one thing that was really difficult for me, the mistakes that I made was hanging on too long and burning up too much cash, hoping that there would be, a faster recovery. But it was such a rich experience. Just learned a tremendous amount about technology, about people, and then kind of fast forwarding was an opportunity to make a career change and looking for something new, and that's when the fractional work picked up, and so then I planted the flag, and that's allowed me to also work on my other projects. I've recently launched a book called Leadership Recall, and promoting that, and so love the balance of being able to work and support some really top tier organizations while also having time for my own projects.
yeah, yeah. So what is a result? And you don't have to name names here, but what's a result that you've helped a client get that you're just incredibly proud of, Steve?
Yeah, I would say, one achievement was there's a company called Yokogawa, and they're based in Japan. They're kind of a competitor in some ways in one of their industries to National Instruments here in Austin, and they put a lot of trust in us. And for a period of time, we were running just one aspect of their corporate site, and eventually almost the entire site. And so it's really exciting that a multi-billion-dollar global organization was basically trusting in our technology, some very sophisticated workflows, a lot of content that was being published would go through legal reviews throughout their legal teams. Had to have at least two people sign off on the legal side as well as on the localization side. So we had to create a lot of logic around making sure that would all work and it would all orchestrate. This is, before, I mean, today you've got, CMS or content management systems, like WordPress that, make a lot of them talking about a lot easier. But
Sure.
back when we were building this was bespoke, and it was enterprise grade, and it was really satisfying to be able to kind of look and see that, hey, we're powering a really large organization and delivering results.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so let's fast forward to today. So now technology's different. I mean, a lot has changed and stuff. How is so where are you at today? And from this vantage point, what's your vision for the company going forward?
Yeah, so the vision going forward is I want to find a good balance. I really enjoy the consulting side. Also, I see a big opportunity and also helping other leaders. Like when I made that pivot into my CIO role, I mentioned, I had to really tune my learning operating system. Then I realized that the way, it kind of back in the web development space, Kevin, when I first was selling White Lion, the web development company services, the economic buyer was the IT team and typically an IT director. And I realized really quickly that they're speaking a completely different language. And I knew that if I could speak their language better, I'd be able to build rapport faster, earn their trust, and ultimately, hopefully, earn their business. And so along the way, I always had this idea. I was challenged also early on that turning my commute into university time, that allocating time throughout my day to learn. And so, for example, I subscribe to the 5 hour rule that, I advocate for it, even though I typically double it. But the idea of as leaders, things are moving incredibly fast, right? Especially
Yes.
with AI. And we should be allocating at least an hour every day on average for outside learning. And I advocate for that, of that hour, we should be allocating about 10% of that time to catalog the key insights that we hear so that we can be able to capture it and have them in a database, in a repository. I promote Notion. Obsidian is also another modern tool. Before, back in the day, it was Evernote, but Notion has really pulled ahead and an incredibly powerful platform for knowledge and to be a knowledge repository. And then also this idea of of recall is that ultimately as leaders we want to be able to be like, well, model Jensen Huang of NVIDIA, or take Elon Musk from SpaceX or Jeff Bezos from Amazon, is they all lead and expect their teams to lead from first principles.
Mhm.
And so we need to make sure that, well, I mean, you really can't lead from first principles if you don't know the first principles. So, for example, as I was listening to the security podcast just today, this idea of an exploit gym, which is very similar to a cyber range, I had to pause and I'd make sure that I heard what it meant,
Okay.
so I could be able to follow in the context in that podcast episode. But also, I knew that this concept is going to come up again in the future.
Mhm.
And as I say and write in the book, time swiftly washes away the obvious. So if we're not capturing the obvious and also cataloging the obvious, and in some cases, those items that need to rise to a higher level where we're going to need them on the recall level, we need systems for that. And so I'm excited about introducing this very important concept because most leaders aren't thinking, I would say, enough about their learning operating systems. How do they capture, catalog, and recall key insights? And those insights too, tying in, very much into this podcast about legacy, right? I mean, we need to make sure, like, would our lives be enriched if we do a better job remembering the key details of the VIPs in our life? So if, for example, like I know all of my clients, spouses' names, kids' names by heart, and it's a very different question if I'm asking someone, "Hey, how is your wife doing?" versus "How is Sharon doing in her new role?"
Yeah.
Right? It just it's a completely different
Way more
approach.
personal.
Big time, yeah. And so, how do we build more authentic relationships? How do we also make sure that we can lead from first principles? How also can we make sure that we're staying current? I mean, at this pace of AI development, I mean, it's important for all leaders because I think you're going to see a separation of leaders in organization, those who are AI forward and those who get left behind. I mean, there's no question the way, I mean, just the horsepower that's available, and it's a concern too. I mean, there's going to definitely be some changes to the, economic structure across the world, but we can either, be on the sidelines or we can be in the arena. And so if we're, being wise about kind of back to this learning operating system and making sure that we are aware of the tools, the technology, also market intelligence, and I call it network intelligence or relational capital. We bring those three together, and we're going to be able to lead and really lead from a higher altitude.
Yeah. 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 So, I mean, AI is such an interesting thing. I mean, it's not just interesting, it's absolutely fascinating. I mean, we are living in such exciting times. And there's a lot of, There's pros and cons to it. There's some crazy stuff coming from AI. There's some amazing stuff coming from AI. And I know in my world, I hear it over and over and over. This whole thing of trust. AI is causing, trust. It's in many ways leading to a trust recession. And I hear that all the time.
Yeah.
And so this whole thing of just real, meaningful connection and relationships is becoming more and more valuable on a daily basis. And yet at the same time, AI, I mean, I'm looking at AI, because like for years, I have been this guy. I bring the right people together and having the right conversations for the right reasons that just leads to new business taking place. And it's the simple, it just happens easily and organically and in
Yep.
flow. But I can only
Frictionless.
do
Yeah.
that with the right people and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there has to be trust. 100% has to
That's
be
right.
trust.
Yeah.
And for many years, I would just have conversations with entrepreneurs and they'd tell me about this, that, and the other thing, what they're working on, what challenges they might be having, what opportunities they're trying to take advantage of. And I would just default to thinking like, who do I know that might be able to help them? And I could just make those connections and stuff. But even at that, I'm even looking at AI now and I'm like, wow, Kev, well, you've done over 400 interviews for this podcast. You talk with people every day. You're talking with entrepreneurs. You have been for years.
Hmm.
What if you're a way to catalog all these and like make this like, I'm just kind of like thinking, a resource called like, something simple like Kevin's List, where I could just plug into that way easier. And because how many opportunities out there that are available that I don't just immediately think of,
Yeah.
And I mean,
That's right.
doing it this way all these years has been well. It's served me well. It's served others well. But
Hmm.
I could be way more effective at this too.
That's right.
And so, what do you see? I mean, where do you? I mean, this is going to have a big impact going forward for sure. And so, well, I want to. So now that people have an idea of who you are and what you're all about, Steve, I want to shift gears just a little bit.
Okay.
I want to talk about the relationship side of all this. So, have you ever been introduced to a person or persons who completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And I'm just really excited to hear about your story and your experience around this topic of relationships.
I think too, Kevin, that may be one of the best interview questions ever. Something too that I do when I find a good question and I hear it because I know that time swiftly washes away the obvious. A lot of times, I mean, I've got a deck in my Recall Fitness app that simply questions and I memorize key questions. That's such a wonderful question to ask. Yeah, the answer is Doug Sherman.
Okay. Okay. So tell me about Doug. How did you guys meet? Let's just start there. How did you and Doug meet?
Well, it started with I fell into a church trap that no one warned me about.
Okay.
So kind of a new believer, and I was told, hey, you need to get involved in a men's Bible study. I'm like, all right, I'll do a men's Bible study. And so the first one many years ago was Dr. Del Tackett. He had what's called the Truth Project
Okay.
and absolutely fascinating, laid out the historicity of Christ in such a compelling way. And we met though, Kevin, at 6:30 a.m. on Wednesday mornings. I was much younger then, and getting up early was a real challenge. It's kind of like a 2x4 to the forehead when the alarm would go off. And so at the end of the Bible study, I told the men's pastor, I'm like, and here's the trap, right? I wasn't warned about this. I said, hey, look, these early mornings are just really hard for me. If there's ever an evening Bible study, I would really like to participate. And so then he kind of looked at me, smiled, and he goes, well, then why don't you start one? And I'm like, there's the trap, right? So I started a men's Bible study. with a dentist here in town in Austin, and it was 6:30 p.m., not 6:30 a.m. on Wednesdays, and it was glorious. And we started going through. All of a sudden, we hear about this guy that moved from Little Rock, Arkansas, had a master's of theology from Dallas Seminary, which is like the Harvard of seminaries, but he's a business guy. He's a CEO. He's a serial entrepreneur, and he's written several books about work and God. He wrote a book called Your Work Matters to God that really put him on the map. And we started going through his content, and it was life changing. And then I got a chance to see him, and he's speaking to about 35 guys, Kevin,
Okay.
and I could just see if there were like poker chips in front of me, I was like, God, I am all in for that kind of a relationship with you, whatever it takes. And by the grace of God, he then is looking for discipling about 7 guys, and I was selected, which was such a blessing. And so we met every single week at a restaurant here in Austin, and he simply taught. I mean, it's all 100% biblical. It's about having an active hours relationship with God. If we're walking with Christ closely, we're going to enjoy his presence. We're going to engage him. Like I really like to, I heard like part of my YouTube algorithm surfaced a video from Father Gary Castor, and he was talking about meeting Mother Teresa. And he said what stood out most to him, Kevin, was that every morning, the first thing Mother Teresa would say when she woke up was, "Good morning, Jesus." And I thought, what a wonderful thing to do. And I knew back to time swiftly washes away the obvious and how you've got to battle for new rhythms. I went to my phone. I said, remind me every morning at 5 a.m. to tell Jesus good morning. And so if we, basically what Doug was teaching was, hey, by the time you wake up to the time you go to bed, it should be a conversation with God from start to finish. It's not about just reading time, reading your Bible, in the morning and having a devotional, and then maybe over meals. It's how do we bring God into a meeting like this?
Yeah.
How are we engaging him, asking him, Lord, would you please help me listen with a pure heart? Maybe it's a small micro prayer, but he promises in the book of James, draw near to me and I will draw near to you. And I just started to really lean into this idea and this promise of an active hours walk with God. And it poured jet fuel with my walk with Christ. And also, like you read in scripture about a peace that surpasses all understanding, this joy. And everything, it all came into focus. And I'm walking around now with a peace and a joy in my heart. And sometimes, yeah, there's a lot of things that are going sideways. We're always going to have some degree of challenge. But his faithfulness to Christ and teaching other men how to enjoy his presence absolutely fundamentally changed every facet of the way I relate to my wife, raise our boys, run businesses, serve and help people.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. It's interesting. I've had a practice for I don't know how many years now, a long time. My friend Tony uh, told me about him doing it, and every night as he's going to bed, he just lays there and just recounts all the things that he's grateful for, just the things that he's grateful for that happened during that day and stuff, whatever that is. And so I've been doing that for I don't know how many years, quite a few now. And it's been a really amazing practice because when we focus on what we're grateful for, I mean, we tend to just attract more great stuff.
It's so true. It's so
And
important.
uh, and I'm going to add to my morning routine with this when I wake up out of bed now. And so
Oh, it's
that
so good. Yeah, and I heard like Bill Johnson, who leads Bethel, and he was, I think, 70 at the time. He said, I realized, he was telling his entire congregation, I realized that I need to tell Jesus out loud every single day that I trust him. And so guess what I did? I said, okay, told my phone every evening, 7 p.m. every evening, remind me to tell Jesus that I trust him. And it's just these small acts of obedience. And those who don't know Christ, I would encourage you the evidence is overwhelming. When I went in, I'm like, I really want to study because he's making some very serious claims. John 14:6, he says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. That is a bold claim. And if it's true, all that matters is knowing and loving Jesus. And so I encourage anyone to really lean in with a heart. Because, God says, he promises in Proverbs, I think it's a new verse I'm memorizing. It's 8:17. He says, I love those who love me, and those who seek me diligently find me. And so if we seek him, he will show up. And these little acts of obedience, like I love that, Kevin. End of the day, just what you're grateful for. And that's also releasing serotonin, which, basically calms the mind and body. God wired us like that. And if we're, I call it intense gratitude. I'm like, Lord, I want to be really grateful. Like we've got a water system in our house. I just had one of my youngest sons, no, my middle, yeah, youngest son's friend, comment. He goes, he goes, I always love coming to your house because you have the best tasting water. I mean, it really is. They oxygenate the water in such a way. And it's just so easy to come in and, press the button, have water come out and not think about it. But like pressing the water and going, Lord, thank you that I can have fresh, clean water on demand. But ultimately, I know too that you are the living water. And just small moments like that. And you start to bring them together, chain them together, and you're just more focused on him, more of his presence. It's kind of like John 3:30, when John the Baptizer saw Jesus coming, he must increase, I must decrease. If we're just focusing more, a little bit more, one or two times every single day on him, it's going to change everything.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, for anybody who might be listening to this and thinking to themselves, man, Kevin, I really like Steve. I love how Steve shows up. I appreciate some of the stuff that he shared. And maybe they're thinking, man, I'd like to just find out more about the work that he's doing, and maybe I know somebody else that I want to get connected with Steve. Any websites, any resources we can share with folks, Steve?
Yeah, you bet. So the website is Leadership Recall. I launched this book. It was launched by Amazon Christmas Eve. It was a great Christmas Eve present. And I go in detail. The category, it's if you want a top tier learning operating system. This is really also really powerful for anybody in a career transition. If they're getting to a new role and they have to learn a complete new landscape, it's crazy powerful. Or if you want to basically rise to the top level and at the top ranks of your industry, I go in detail. The book is available. I was challenged by a company here in town called selfpublishing.com, and I use their same model where you can get a copy of the manuscript as a PDF or an audio version at no cost.
Okay.
So I'm giving the keys to a Ferrari at no cost. So you can check that out at leadershiprecall.com.
Okay.
And there's over about 79 illustrations. I designed it to where if someone wants to come in and have the DIY approach, do it yourself, you can be able to do that yourself. I also offer templates. I also masterminds and cohorts as well. I recently took a group of about 45 leaders through it, and just incredible results on how they can be able to rethink and rebuild and reimagine their learning operating system so they can ultimately lead with excellence. I'd say so. Leadershiprecall.com, Kevin, and also I'm active on LinkedIn.
Okay. Very good. And so if you're listening to this, we always make it nice and easy. Just scroll down right there and you'll find links right there, and make it nice and easy for you. Is there any last thing that you feel led to share, Steve, before we call it a wrap?
Yeah, I think that overall, kind of back to your trust recession comment, I think there's also a lot of anxiety and fear around this AI transition, and it's going to be continue to accelerate. It's really amazing the power and how it can make you more efficient and effective. But I continually hear even those that are on the leading edge of this, or maybe even on the bleeding edge, everyone feels behind. And a lot of people are feeling so behind, they're not taking action to start to figure out and experiment on their own. And it starts with how we learn. If we can be able to learn better, like part of my learning operating system is tuned towards those who are applying AI in certain disciplines like finance or marketing. And I can be able to hear and listen and then take those ideas and immediately experiment on my own so I can also help others be able to challenge their way they're looking at AI. So I think overall, everyone is behind right now, but being completely on the sidelines, I think is a precarious position to take, and that we need to be in the arena and making small incremental steps every single week of getting more familiar with the tools. And the good news is, before, when AI first came out, you had to be this prompt engineer and having to speak to it in a certain way. Now, all you need to do is basically vocalize, give it some context, tell it what you want to have to be the final outcome, and just learn. And it's really powerful to use the tools in the right context. And also the element too of being able to go deeper on the relational side. I think there's a big opportunity for leaders who think, "Hey, I'm just not good with names. I'm not good with remembering details." If you're using a tool that I mentioned in the book called Anki, if we're pre-med, we're all using the same digital flashcard tool that's proven over the decades. And you can be able to memorize anything you want at scale. And I advocate for about 3 minutes a day to memorize content, and it will absolutely enrich your life.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Steve, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation today. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you, and I'm excited to get this out there and share it with folks. So thank you so much, Steve.
You're very welcome. Thanks, Kevin.
You bet.